drifting away from each other, definitely they are getting it in the wrong way, because innovation cannot be seen at the end of the day of the required quality. But a situation where the industry, the detachment of the knowledge, that is the university, as well as the research institutions, as well as the government, are drifting towards each other in such a way that communication of high quality is being initiated, certainly at the end of the day, very, very high quality innovation is going to be emanated. We have what we call the triple helix, where the three spheres coming together to form this helix as indicated in the board. We have the government, the industry, as well as the academia. Number one, you can see where the government and the tertiary institutions are overlapping. If there is no industries, that means there is no destination for the products that will come at the end of the day. There will be government support, there will be knowledge support, but at the end of the day, there will be no industrial support. Similarly, where there is interface between government as well as the industry, without supply of knowledge, we will not be able to get a very high quality innovation, because whatever comes out is not driven by knowledge. At the same time, if there is tertiary institution, that is the detachment of the knowledge, you have the industry without political goodwill, certainly the whole thing is not going to materialize. However, where the three come to interface, that is certainly where you have intellectual properties interfacing between government, research, as well as the industry. You will have patents, you will have industrial designs, you will have trademarks, you will have trade secrets, you will have so many other things that will be considered as ingredients of innovations that can be taken to the market. Indeed, what we call technology licensing. With this technology licensing, knowledge will just come around, because that is what will certainly attract investors. So you have incubators, you will have patents, you have designs, you have prototypes, as well as the final pilot schemes. In this model, the industrial, in this model, the industrial arrangement between the universities and industries, including government, are related through linkages and strategic alliances, leading to knowledge-based economic development. However, building linkages as well as feedback mechanisms between the establishments and institutions of higher learning within the national system of science and technology require input. Require intermediary infrastructures related to institutional mechanisms and organizations aimed at improving the transfer of knowledge between the supply and demand side of the science and technology, including innovation. So the most common strategies used by academic developers include research and development capacity, technology transfer and other financial and non-financial incentives, technology business management training, customized training facilities, increased access to capital, creating knowledge opportunities, as well as export assistance. So now we are beginning to start talking about the commercialization through the incubation. As I said earlier, if you have viable R&Ds, you can decide to nurture them and direct them straight to the market. Number two, you can decide to get an entrepreneur. For example, you have an architect. The architect that has designed a house does not mean is the person who would supervise the construction of the house. That design can easily be transferred to a third party who will take the responsibility of the implementation of the project. So you can equally decide to embrace incubation towards ensuring that that particular research and development result is channeled through incubation process for eventual commercialization, so that the product at the end of the day will become a company product, a company that will be a key player in the economy. So we can see from my immediate left, where the red arrow is, you can see the commencement of the commercialization process, and on my immediate right, it ends up with jobs and wealth creation. Under you have the research output, you have the prototypes, you have the patents as well as the pilot schemes, and you have the scaling up. So it is the scaling up hurdles that are the critical issues in the commercialization efforts towards ensuring that those R&D efforts, patents, or all those intellectual properties are translated into knowledge-based jobs, knowledge-based activities that are capable of creating wealth. Under the research output, you have the tertiary institutions as well as the research agencies which constitute the detachment of the knowledge. And by the time you move, you have these micro, small and medium enterprises, and you have the large enterprises, all coming up as a result of the scaling up, which basically is what technology incubation is all about. So that is from the research to large industries. We can see from this particular chart, you have the researcher, you have the entrepreneur. Under the researcher, you have the research and development output that is coming from the university or the research institution. You have the entrepreneur on the other side. So now we are saying that that particular academician who is the originator of the concept of the research and development result is now trying to transfer those R&D outputs to an entrepreneur who is in the technology incubation center. You have the required tools and equipment in the technology incubation center, and you have what we call the pre-incubation. You have the angels, you have the venture capitalists, and you have the personnel preparing the feasibility report. At the end of the pre-incubation, if it is positive, then at the end of the evaluation of the feasibility report, if it is positive, then we move to the full residency, so that continuation of the nurturing will take place, while if it is negative, we modify that particular research output, or if we discover that there are a lot of difficulties, we can just discard. That means it is not going to be a very viable business, and at the end of the day, if we insist, we will end up wasting our time. So, however, if it is positive, we just move straight to the resident incubation. Going back to research and development output, you see the technology incubation center. So the pre-incubation activities normally take place in the technology incubation center, which is followed by the evaluation of the feasibility report. Then you move to the resident or non-resident incubation. What I mean by the resident incubation is the entrepreneur as well as the research and development result move physically to the technology incubation center, where that particular project is linked to laboratories, multi-purpose workshops, the required personnel that will assist in the nurturing of the enterprise. However, if for reasons such as size, distance, or convenience, that particular entrepreneur cannot have access to technology incubation center, extension services can be provided by the technology incubation center, so that all these ingredients that have been earlier mentioned can be extended to the entrepreneur while outside the technology incubation center. The only difference between the extended and the resident, that I'm referring to the non-resident as the extended, is that the non-resident is not physically present in the technology incubation center. So if all the requirements of the technology incubation are fulfilled, then that is for a period of about 3 years, that company or that product can be considered to be a successful product capable of coming to the market. And it will graduate from the technology incubation center to the wide stream of the economy. This is called post-incubation. However, if the requirements for the incubation are not fulfilled, that is, the company is not matured enough, then we have to extend the stay of the company in the technology incubation center and penalize the company for overstaying while we correct whatever shortcomings have been observed. During the post-incubation, monitoring, evaluation, additional linkages to the international community, access to increased ICT, because ICT has always been the common denominator in the activities of the technology information sectors. And this is certainly what leads to the formation of all of companies. I have mentioned technology incubation several times, so I need to say briefly what technology incubation is all about. It is a popular economic development tool which has been used by both the developed and developing economies to fast-track local and regional economic development. It is an integrated support program provided by governments, academic institutions, and private sector, either individually or in partnership, with the intention of creating and nurturing both value-added and technology-based enterprises. The concepts of the technology incubation. The process begins with the admission of value-added technology-based enterprises into a technology incubation center and ends up with graduation after 3 years. That is present incubation. At the technology incubation centers, shared facilities such as working spaces, offices, hands-on management assistance, access to finance, networking, and linkages to knowledge, as well as exposure to critical businesses, technical and legal support services that enhance the success of the enterprise during incubation period are provided at very, very subsidized rates. The scope is divided into two. We have the raw technologies, which comprises the manufacturing of simple equipment and machineries, upgrading of traditional technologies, as well as simple handcrafts. Medium technologies, which includes manufacturing of electrical and electronic components and equipment, chemical processes, and so on and so forth. We have the high-tech biotechnology processes and products, information and communication technology, that is in terms of both hardware and software, space technology, both in hard and soft, artificial intelligence, as well as robotics. However, we also have the high technologies, which constitute the advanced materials, the nanos, lasers, and so on and so forth. The vision of the program is to pursue the commercialization of technologies and technical inventions using technology incubation as a tool in order to enhance the attainment of technological, industrial, and social and economic competitiveness of our country, thereby improving the quality of life of the citizens, while the mission is to develop the necessary infrastructure for nurturing technology startups and promote Nigeria's indigenous potentials through value-added and technology-related activities, and to create an enabling environment for effective linkage among technology providers, entrepreneurs, as well as capital. While the mandate is to establish and manage the operations of technology incubation centers and parks, while ensuring the commercialization of research and development results from research and establishment, as well as other related innovative efforts. So we have the goals, that is technology commercialization, to provide platform for speedy commercialization of technologies by effectively linking talents, technology capital, and know-how. We have the wealth and employment generation. We have enhanced global competitiveness. We have value reorientation. While the benefits are also clear. To the entrepreneurs, it enhances chances of success, raises credibility, and helps improve skills and create synergy among client firms. To the governments, it helps overcome market failures, promotes regional development, generates jobs and incomes and taxes, and becomes a demonstration of government's political will to businesses. To the research institutions, it helps strengthen interactions and collaborations between knowledge base and the industries, and promote the commercialization of R&Ds and foster enabling environment which encourages faculties and students to maximize their potentials. While to the local community, it enhances the creation of entrepreneurial culture as well as local incomes and jobs within the majority of the graduating businesses taking a Australian state. So we have what we call the pre-incubation, resident incubation, non-resident, and extended. We don't have time. We have the community incubation. We have in Nigeria, we have 39 technology incubation centers. We have spotted where they are. The only few states that we don't have Yobe, Shigawa, Ebonyi, and Rivers, all over the federation we have. We have the kind of activities that are taking place. You have the engineering fabrications, you have leather, you have chemical processes, you have energy savers, you have controls and computers, you have solid minerals processing, you have medicals, including veterinaries, you have food processing, you have waste recycling, as well as automobiles. At the end of the day, ICT is the common denominator and is the driver for the activity all knowledge-driven as well as globally competitive products. These are some of the success stories. I don't need to start mentioning, but they have been very wonderful. These are some of the products you can see, all in collaboration with research institutions. You can see all these products, waste recycling, you can see conversion from waste to wealth. You can see the biodiesel. You can see. The program challenge is only one: lack of a robust intellectual property culture within government, industry, as well as academia. I can imagine if in the whole of Abuja, every MSc holder is having 5 patents to his credit. I can imagine if every PhD holder is having 20 patents to his credit. I cannot imagine the number of investors coming to invest in the knowledge-driven products that will become products of international competitive standard. I thank you very much for your patience.
The speaker for the day on commercializing innovations. Our next speaker is Michael Uluwagbeni, board chair of Athletics. Michael, will you please come and say the presentation? Can you switch presentations? Can you come for Michael's presentation, please?
Good morning. Good morning. Everyone is quiet. Good morning. You need to wake up. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address this gathering this morning. My name is Michael Uluwagbeni. I'm the chairman of AfriLabs, which is the network of all technology incubators hubs in Africa. I think first, I definitely want to recognize the minister from Ethiopia. I see from the first day we had quite a number of ministers here, but you're the only one left. That says a lot about your commitment to innovation. I think you deserve. We have another minister here. Oh, no comment. But I think it deserves a good round of applause for that. That shows commitment to innovation. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. First, I have to say that upon listening to the previous presentation, what keeps coming back to my mind is I really do feel that the process of innovation itself might require innovation. And what do I mean by this? In the last 5 years, something interesting has happened in the world of technology. The biggest manufacturer in the world, Foxconn, in China, has no product of itself. Yet it ships almost 20% of OEM equipment and manufactured technology products in the world, including Apple phone. The biggest hotel operator in the world, Airbnb, has no single hotel room. Yet it has 10 times the valuation of the largest listed hotelier. The largest taxi operator in the world does not own a single vehicle or taxi. Also, the biggest newspaper in the world, Yahoo newspaper, barely employs 30 people, yet it aggregates information from different newspapers. And almost all of us, our intuition when we want to read the news is to do www.yahoo.com. The largest operator of a TV station platform in the world is Google on YouTube, where more than 1 million hours of videos are uploaded every minute. The largest, the fastest growing telephone network in the world is Facebook's WhatsApp, and it does not have a telecom license. Something is going on in our world. And what does these companies have in common? Be it Google, be it Airbnb, Dropbox, Facebook, they are often products of what we call disruptive innovation. Innovation that refuse to follow the pattern, the traditional pattern from research through a long process of thinking, analysis, hypothesis. These are innovations that decided to be out of the box. In fact, these innovations do not recognize the box. Instead of being out of the box, they are breaking the box. And these are the kind of innovations that are producing millions and thousands of jobs. And that takes me into my next slide. I think you probably have the whole slide. I asked that the new slide would go on, but no problem. My next slide has something which I wanted to mention. I will mention anyway. Jobs are the new human right. Jobs are the new human rights. If your technology innovation process does not result in the production of jobs, then the whole process itself has been defeated. In Nigeria today, we have 45% of our youth unemployed. As a result, the high incidences today, you hear of vandalism of pipeline, destruction of infrastructure, armed robbery. The hidden hand is the devil's workshop. We've all heard that statement. So it is important that when we're talking about innovation, when we're talking about incubation, and when we're talking about technology innovation, the only thing that matters is not patents, even though the researchers want you to believe that. The only thing that matters is not the number of billion-dollar valuation, even though the unicorns in Silicon Valley want you to believe that. The only thing that matters for us in Africa, as far as I'm concerned, is jobs. In Nigeria today, we produce about 1 million new students every year from our universities, polytechnics, and tertiary institutions. But we end up creating 20,000 jobs. Now, we're not talking about those who got dropped out during when they were in the primary or secondary education fields. Those are, usually they're fine. Why? Because there are a lot of menial jobs. It could be drivers, it could be stewards. They're fine. They will find something. However, when you go to university for 4 years, and your poor parents have put you through school with the last dime of money they have in their pocket, and then you end up unemployed, then we are what I call the dangerously educated. Because they're not just educated, they are frustrated. And those are the ones that can become problems for our societies if we do not take care of them. There's a 980,000 gap in job creation in this country every year. It was 980,000 in 2000. It's 980,000 today. But there's something interesting in that process. This process of what I call unemployment generation. This dangerous unemployment generation. The biggest creator of unemployment in Nigeria is also the biggest spender in the economy. What do I mean by that? The biggest creator of unemployment is the government. They create unemployment through the universities. They fund universities, and we have quite a number of them in Nigeria. Most of them are either funded by the federal or state governments and a few private universities. They are the biggest creators of unemployment. But the government is also the biggest spender. But in between that, there's a big disconnect. The government does not buy from the innovators and innovative minds created by the universities. A typical government procurement process today, if you look at it, has a long list of requirements that you have to meet. 3 years of tax return, 20 years of these, and 30 years of experience. As a result of that, the young startups cannot sell to the government, but the government keep pumping them out. Startups or developers or single minds or single innovators, but we don't have jobs for them because the government don't want to buy from them. The government rather buy from the big mega companies. As a result of this problem, then we have to rethink this whole innovation, entrepreneurship, job generation process. And that thinking and that thinking relates to what some few young out-of-the-box thinkers came up with, which was tech hubs. Technology hubs are not necessarily technology incubators. Technology hubs are not necessarily research institutions. But technology hubs are what we call co-creation labs, open collaboration spaces, where young people can come, collaborate, and from there we can create a new model for job creation, a new model for innovation. And that ecosystem consists of quite a number of players, and I will not bore you with them because you've heard them before. But it is not so much about those who are playing in the ecosystem, it's how they are organized and how the technology hubs can then bridge the gap, like I said, between the unemployment generators to the biggest spender, which is the government. And this is the possibilities that we're talking about here today. Why hubs? There are two different kinds of hubs. We have the hubs that were founded, the initial hubs that actually started the model in the United States, in Silicon Valley. And I always try to make this point. This is a very important slide for me because I always like to make the point about the success of the hubs overseas and it's where we are going in Africa and to see where we can actually make the difference. The hubs that started in 2000, 2001 out of the Silicon Valley, led by Paul Graham of Y Combinator. Most of those hubs were started because there was a need to recreate the innovation process. The innovation process in companies, in corporations, as well as in the universities of the United States was simply not working. And there were a bunch of young men that had money in their pocket after the technology innovation of the 90s. And however, they had a tech boss, but they were out of work. They used to work at Netscape. They had a lot of money in their wallet, but they didn't have jobs and they were bored. But they didn't have a way to go back to the traditional corporation, and they felt that, well, I don't want to be a traditional angel. I would rather start a space where I can bring young people and coach them about the way I write, that's where I was. I founded PayPal, Elon Musk, the founder of LinkedIn, Paul Graham, and the rest of them. And Paul Graham himself led this charge by starting Y Combinator, and today Y Combinator have founded a number of companies, including Airbnb, Dropbox, among many others, among the many unicorns I talked about that employs millions in the world today. That process itself is somewhat contrasting and different from what started the tech innovation movement in Africa. Our own movement in Africa here was started by a bunch of young brigands and renegades in the 2007-2008 period. That period saw the financial crisis hit the Western nations, as well, especially Europe and North America. And these young people that graduated from the universities who were Africans had no jobs waiting for them. The only thing they had for them was they were educated in the Western universities and they were exposed to the Western models, and they also had Africa. So they came back home. A lot of them started the high hubs as well as the CC Hub and Innovation Hub in Lagos, Nigeria. On coming back home, most of them partnered with their friends, colleagues that they left, who were back home and were also in the university, but also graduated into new jobs. So they're lying in the difference. The difference is the tech hubs in the United States were started by a bunch of millionaires and billionaires. Those in Africa were started by a bunch of returnees. But the interesting connect between both of them, however, was that both of them wanted to create jobs. And the ones in Africa, especially, went about it in quite an interesting way. Because they recognized that they had a ready pool of talent that they could feed into the hub, which was 45% unemployed. And those ready pool were eventually taken through a process of skill acquisition because the universities, basically, to put it nicely, had not done their jobs. These young people were not trained in software, they were not trained in software engineering as such. So the first few years, 1 or 2 years up to 2010, 2011, and here I'm getting historical, were spent in a lot of development and training, partnering with Google, partnering with Microsoft, and training and putting these young people through the very basics of writing apps and coding and those kind of things. And then you now saw the movement shaping in the 2011-2012. Today we have the Yabacon Valley in Lagos, which is thriving with a number of hubs. We have a number of those also thriving in Kigali, thriving in Ethiopia, IADs, also thriving in Egypt. Today, AfriLab as an entity has 40 innovation hubs within our system, and about 20 others will join us this year across 28 countries in Africa. This is the success story of innovation hubs in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Egypt. And they also have their superstars. Today we have Andela. Andela is a product of this process. Andela is a company, the growing technology companies in the world. Yes, headquartered in New York, but started out of Fora. In fact, the innovation hub which I co-founded was one of the early investors in Fora. And today Fora was acquired by a number of renegades from the Silicon Valley, and now it's headquarters in New York. And it is doing technology innovation in a different way by training developers to then get outsourced jobs from the large corporations like MasterCard and Visa. In addition to this, we have across the value chain, we also have a new type of innovation, a new type of innovator. I call them the governance innovator, like budget. Budget have changed the way we interact with our government in Nigeria, and it's a product of CCR. Budgets today expose a number, billions of naira and dollars that were padded in Nigeria's budget, and it's bringing and shining the light of transparency on Nigeria's government like never before. This is a product of Africa's technology innovation, and it has to be encouraged as a result of the things it is doing differently that could never be done through the traditional process. It was nearly impossible. Now I will talk about this commercialization model, the technology commercialization model using Innovation Hub. You see, I recognize there are two models. There's the traditional path, which is the research. Very important and still very valid. In fact, the interesting thing is how innovation jumps from the research path into the second part, which primarily I've been discussing here today. The research part is very important because it is where the seeds of innovations are planted. But the ideation part, which actually goes into incubation, acceleration, and industry, which is the commercialization model through incubators, is even more important because that is the way you get into jobs. While the university traditional research method will probably get you a lot of patents, it might not get you a lot of jobs. To get the bang for your buck, you will need to transfer technology that was created in universities into the other innovation model and accelerate it quickly in order to achieve jobs. This is what was done by one company, one tiny company out of Silicon Valley called Google. Google was started by a bunch of PhD researchers, and over time, those John Brain and Sergey and Brain decided that, well, we are not doing this PhD anymore, we want to make a lot of money and want to fly private jets. And they decided to take that, the result of their research, which they were working on as PhD students, and to take it into the other path. And they fast-tracked it, and today Google employs more than 100,000 people. That is directly. Indirectly, Google probably employs close to 1 billion people in the world that we live in today. Because I cannot tell everybody in this room use Google. And if you use Google to improve your work, they were employed by Google. And I think this tells you the power of the new technology commercialization model. That model has at its heart technology hubs as well as the fast-paced commercialization model that they present. It brings research into the real world by having young people interact with them and fast prototyping, failing forward, and being able to attract funding externally and internally. Upon getting this funding, young people can then take those the research that the scientific research which they've obtained through the traditional research process, combine it with funding and turn it into usable products. Usable products means customers means buyers, buyers means that process continues to feed itself. It is very important to know that this process is not linear, it is iterative. Unlike the traditional model where you go from hypothesis to laws, theories, I've forgotten it by the way because I have not been using the traditional process apparently. This process does not respect process. Let me say that again. This process does not respect process. You can go from having no taxi to being the largest taxi company in the world in 1 year because you do not respect the process. If you respect process, then you'll have to keep to the laws of the more than 288 municipalities that Cuba have had to fight one city at a time to remove obstructive taxi laws that was going to obstruct that innovation process. And it is being able to respect that in innovators and being able to harness that energy in innovators that ultimately leads to job creation. How do we leverage hubs to achieve commercialization model? First, we have to recognize that hubs by itself do not create jobs. Hubs are really platforms, one, for youth engagement. We have a problem on the continent. 45% of our youth are unemployed. If they are not engaged, then we have a problem. So first thing first, hubs are platform for youth engagement. Youth come there, they engage, they collaborate, they create. Upon collaboration and creation, youth can then, the young people around us can then be able to attract to themselves funding, which can get them to job creation and job engagement. And therein lies the gap that we have to fill. Hubs fill the second gap, which is skill acquisition, like I mentioned before. Hubs are then platform, aside from youth engagement, for students to acquire skills they did not learn in universities. And you have Cisco's, Google, Microsoft, all the big corporates as well as small corporates engage with hubs in order to fill that skill gap. Thirdly, after filling the skills, hubs then provide these youth in a fast environment skills of entrepreneurs, training on how to do business plan, training on how to do financial model, training on how to pitch. You need to be able to translate your product to a pitch, effective pitch for investors to buy. And these young people can then get money faster, much faster than traditional entrepreneurs will. Ultimately, hubs can also serve a fourth purpose, and this is a purpose which I hope to share with you today. Hubs can serve the purpose of procurement. Instead of engaging with single buyers and single software developers, our government can begin to engage with innovation hubs as platforms to procure technology to solve government's problem. The other day I was in the NHIS and I had some serious issues with regard to understanding the database of people that access health insurance on their platform. And we introduced them to 3 of our startups. Almost immediately they said, we've been looking for this kind of solution, but we can't find it. We've called IBM, we've called Microsoft. I told them, you're looking at the wrong places. IBM and Microsoft depend on these young people, depend on these startups, but because of your lengthy procurement process, you cannot access them. However, they say, well, we cannot engage directly with this. This is a one-man company, two-man company. I said, well, you can engage with us. We are the hubs. You come directly to the hubs, you contract us, and then we can contract with the developers. Innovation Hub, for example, in Lagos, have done this successfully with Total PLC. Total PLC wanted 3 solutions in order to prevent the loss of products and diversion of products from its trucks and tankers. They engaged in a hackathon for over 2 weeks, and they were able to get 4 solutions. 4 of those solutions were contracted, and they were fully developed and integrated with Total PLC West African solution. That is what hubs do. That is what hubs can do. Government can engage with hubs in order to ensure that they connect the biggest spender with the biggest unemployment generator. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thanks so much. Unfortunately, it's slightly short of time, so we'll take questions in the coffee break afterwards. Directly get contacted. Our next speaker is Olayele Adeloko, Associate Professor of Information Systems at DePaul University, a very distinguished academic. A round of applause, please, for Olayele, who's going to share with us his views of commercialization of innovation. And Dennis, can we switch presentations and bring up Olayele's presentation? Thank you.
Hi everyone. I actually planned to tell you a small joke to start my presentation, but all the good jokes have been said yesterday, so I'll save the joke for another time. Let me load my slide, please. So I think my slide is up. So the question is, how do you commercialize an innovation? What do you really need to do to commercialize an innovation? And the way I prepared this talk, I directed it to the young people in the room. Of course, anyone that is planning to turn into an entrepreneur and launch an innovation. So that's the purpose of this presentation. I'm directing it to people that want to be an entrepreneur, that want to commercialize their entrepreneurial venture, and I want to kind of share some kind of thought process, more like a motivational speech, so to say, on how to go about this. So next slide, please. So there are a few things that might throw you off as I go through this presentation. Next slide, please. Just pay attention because it might look confusing. All right, yeah, I can use it. Where do I point it? All right, good. So pay attention, just be warned. It might throw you off, but I promise I'll get you there, okay? So, very short agenda. I have 5 things I want to cover in 10 minutes. The first point over there is failure is okay. I'm actually asking you to fail. I know that kind of sounds confusing for a speaker telling the audience that you should fail. But I will explain that in a minute. And I'm also asking you to steal. Stealing is okay. Then there's a point that you probably can say, I'm saying, stay where you are. And then 2 other points. Okay, so let's get going. So, if you wanna launch an innovation, right? Are you gonna get it right the first time? If you think you're gonna get it right the first time, raise your hand. The very first time you try it, you're gonna get it right. No one is raising his hand. So, most likely you're not gonna get it right the first time. You're gonna try so many times to get it right that is just the process of innovation. One of the most innovative person in the world is Edison. You guys know how many times he failed? 10,000 times. He said he failed his way to success. In another work, he said, I learned 10,000 different ways that you cannot create a light bulb. Another successful person failed 9,000 times. Michael Jordan, he missed 9,000 shots. What is my point? My point is, if you're going to be an innovator, you got to be ready to go the long way. It's not a quick thing. There is few good news. There is no rule. No rule. You could do whatever you like. As Mike said earlier on, if can I have my follow-up? Can I get follow-up? If companies like Uber, like Facebook, and all these other companies have followed the rule, they probably won't be where they are. So, no rule, and it's okay to fail. The next point is, it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. To steal. So, I want to talk about, I think my PowerPoint is messing up. Oh. Stay here, okay. All right. I think something is wrong with my slide. Well, it's all right. I'll just go through it. What I'm trying to say here is, where does innovation really come from? Does it still come from the university R&D, as the 2 speakers mentioned? Yes, it does. MIT lab is one of the biggest innovation labs in the world. Many of you have Bose speakers at home. A lot of research is coming from MIT, Stanford, Harvard in the medical space. Also, it comes from the companies. If you look at companies like GE, Ford, they spend billions of dollars on research and innovation. And it still comes from the crowd. And that is what I want to talk about. That's what I want to focus on. The wisdom of the crowd. Mike talks about the unemployment people. The point here is, if you look at companies like Facebook, how many of you have clicked the like button in the last, okay. So you like something on Facebook, what is that? They're getting ideas of what the crowd likes. You actually, these days, you throw an innovation idea to the crowd to get feedback. You want to know what the people are thinking. What is going to be the next big thing? It's so critical to get this feedback so we can create the next big thing. The point is, great idea doesn't come from, geniuses. No, really. And if you look at these 2 guys, they actually make products we all depend on today, right? Many of you still use Windows, or you use Apple, right? The iPod, iPhone, and all that. All right, so let me just take a step back. What makes these 2 guys successful the very first thing they did? Is it their ideas? Is it their ideas? Absolutely not. Steve Jobs went to Xerox. Xerox would be the largest company, the most powerful company in the world. Jobs went to Xerox, saw three things. And he just got hooked on the first one. Do it. You can come up with it. Graphical user interface. He become a billionaire on something he stole from Xerox. In fact, Xerox executives, the R&D staff at Xerox said, don't let this guy in. They called the executives, they say, he's a small boy, let him in, no damages, let him say whatever he needs to say. He went away with GUI, created Apple. What did Bill do? Bill copied Apple to launch Windows, right? So it's okay to steal. It's okay to fail. So as you are talking about your own innovation, remember that great people, it's all about, in fact, it's not about plan A, it's not about the first thing you did. You guys, many of you use Facebook. What do we have before Facebook? MySpace? You guys remember MySpace? Right? How many of you have used MySpace? Is it MySpace or Space My or whatever it's called? I don't know. MySpace, right? Okay. What's the difference between MySpace and Facebook? It's just more user-friendly. Same thing, same social platform. So, where does innovation come from? It comes from all these places. The old school says it comes from the universities, it comes from the R&D. Now it comes from each and every one of you. It comes from the crowd. Take advantage of these multiple sources of innovation. So that's the point over there. All right, you need a stroke of luck. You need to be at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And I'll come back to this point. I only have one slide on that. The next point is, again, brain twisting, localization. What's the point? Localization is the new globalization. What do I mean? Why did a company globalize? Why would a company go to India? Why would a company come to Nigeria? Why would a company go to Brazil? Because of the talent in the location. Because of the resources in the location. Because of the productivity. Productivity is a new definition of competitive advantage. How productive are you per second, per minute, per week, per day? So if a location is productive, companies will go there regardless of time. So in my class I talk about AAA. Anytime, anywhere, anyhow. Location is so critical in today's global world that you cannot be a global player without taking care of the location. So if Nigeria want to be the most innovative, most productive location, they could be the next biggest global thing. All right, so that is the point here, that stay where you are and make it turn into the most productive location. All this thing I've talked about is actually very well illustrated in hubs, as Mike said, in clusters, and it's very easy to see these things. If you go to Silicon Valley, I have two pictures that I took from Silicon Valley. I have a slide here that says why clusters. I won't go through this slide because it's going to take too long, so I'm going to skip it. But you can quickly go, some key points says spillovers, complementary products. So if you think about Silicon Valley, you have the hardware companies, you have Intel, right? Intel is actually a chemical company, believe it or not. Intel, you have software companies, right? You have Microsoft and others. So you have everybody. So you have complementaries. This is an example of the cluster in Chicago. This is my space. This is where I live most of my time. I'm always saying you can find me here anytime you come to Chicago. This is what the space looks like. I'm almost done. This is Boston medical clusters, and you can see multiple players there. You see, you have the university, you have Harvard, you have MIT, you have the medical labs and all that. I'll skip that. So again, we're talking about complementary. So I'll spend a second on the Boston Medical Lab, why that is important. So if you're into pharmaceutical, right? What are some of the byproducts of pharmaceuticals? Chemicals that you can use to make body creams, plastics, right? So the knowledge created in that cluster spill over, and you have complementary products. So the whole idea of a cluster is not necessarily tied to one industry. it is multiple industries. I have some other examples. I think I have an example of Napa Valley. So we're talking about Napa Valley, what do you have there? Wine. So you have the farmers, you have the bottling companies, you have the universities as well. Okay. These are my pictures from Silicon Valley, list of companies in Silicon Valley. Some really quick things about what makes a cluster successful. And I think the last two speakers probably talked about it just a little bit. But one important thing I talked about is the VC, the venture capitalist. And I will tie that to my first point. If you're going to get money from a venture capitalist and you've never failed before, you've never tried anything before, the likelihood of you getting money from a VC is very low. But if you've tried it 10 times and you fail 9.5 times, the likelihood of you getting money from a VC is very high. Some key benefits of being in a cluster. So how do you commercialize your innovation? It's important for you to collaborate. You have to collaborate, you have to work together, you have to compete. So one of the most famous phrases in Silicon Valley, for example, is co-opetition. You compete on a very little thing, and you collaborate on a lot of things. So co-opetition is either I put a lot of people in the same space, and we want to compete and collaborate. All right, social network, we know what that is. Again, innovation comes through that process. So this, I think, my last slide. Why is cluster important, and why should countries like Nigeria and other African countries try to, spend a little bit more resources building clusters? The real value is 1 + 1 is not 2. 1 + 1 equals 3. Because of the knowledge being created, because of you are pushing each other when you collaborate and you cooperate at the same time. The value generated is way beyond 1 + 1 equals 2. I think that's my last slide. I'll be around to take a few questions if you need me to. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Professor Olayele. That was a very good session on clustering models in Silicon Valley, and our previous speakers talked about how we can replicate those in Africa as well. I really wish we had more time for questions and answers, but we have to move on with the agenda. But the speakers will be around for coffee break. For questions, so you can catch them for questions afterwards. We now move on to our next session, which is a panel discussion. Dennis, can you bring up the panel discussion presentation slide? We have 4 excellent speakers now talking about ICT for social development. This theme came up a lot on day 1 and day 2, which is going beyond the big plans of ICTs, what is happening on the ground in terms of social development. Then we invite our speakers up on stage. Bradley Shaw, will you please come up? Bradley Shaw is the Business Development Director at Ubongo, comes to us from South Africa. Then we have Achi Fato Undaye, who is the Deputy Country Representative for UN Women. Please come up on stage. Let me also ask Mwambita Makamba, Executive Head of Pan-Africa Business Development at Vodacom, also the Head of Business Africa and Enterprise Business at Vodacom. And last but not least, Noni Upoma, who is the Secretary of the MTN Foundation. Will you please come up on stage? A round of applause, please, for 4 excellent speakers. Okay, well, unfortunately missing Mwambita, but we have 3 other excellent speakers. So we have good gender diversity on this panel as compared to some of the earlier ones. Thank you. So I have 5 questions for the panel, but I'm sure all of you have questions of your own as well. So feel free to jump in at any time. We have a 1-hour interactive panel, which means all of you can also jump in with your own questions, suggestions, and contributions. So my first question to the panel is, we've had ICTs now for 15, 20, maybe 30 years. We define ICTs as PCs or internet or mobile internet and so on. What have been the most promising, the most notable impacts so far? What has ICT really done for people on the ground so far? You want to start, Brad? Why don't you move over one so that if we get the one, it's better for the photos and stuff.
Great. Is this one on? In all honesty, though, I'd just like to kind of take a step back and chat to some of the points in the previous session as well. I think innovation is also key in the social development space as well. And a lot of the points that have been made in terms of clusters, in terms of what's being done in the incubation space, those are all critical for social development as well. A lot of the technologies and the developments that are taking place have had massive impact on the social space as well. However, there are challenges, but I think let's start with the impacts, and I think the improvement in literacy, whether that's reading and writing, digital literacy, understanding of technologies. I think there's been a massive improvement in that in the last kind of 5 or 6 years as devices become more accessible, the price of hardware decreases, and again, the flip side of that is there's still challenges in that space as well. Rural connectivity is still a problem. I was chatting to Chris from the University of Nairobi last night, and just in Nigeria, he was saying that there are villages that aren't connected. Now, from a social development perspective, if we're looking at connecting with rural communities digitally, that's obviously a problem if there's no connectivity. So we're looking at how do we connect with them? How do we have impact in those communities? At the moment, it's predominantly radio, SMS, potentially IVR, but IVR services are generally expensive. So, yeah, I think my view on this is the impact is that you've got to start engaging as soon as you can and with the youth as young as you possibly can. So I think that's my view.
For sharing information and knowledge. We've been able to send out information across the country for information, education, communication materials to increase awareness for health information, to help people. Things like when the Ebola crisis came up and the Lassa fever, digital media has played an increasing role in reaching audience across the country. And for some of our projects, we've relied on digital media to get participation, to increase awareness. Some of our projects, like we have projects where we have scholarship projects where we invite students across the country to apply for scholarships annually. We use various platforms to reach students to apply. They apply online. We've had geo-targeted messages that we send out to rural communities where we're going to have eye surgeries across the country. So that drives a lot of people to the location where we're having those eye surgeries, cataract surgeries across the country. So that over the past 2 years, we've had over 18,000 or thereabouts cataract surgeries that we've done. So for digital media has been quite successful. We've been quite successful using digital media to reach different people. And we think that, the penetration has been quite high, a lot more successful, albeit using just SMSs and using IVR that you mentioned, but also using Facebook platforms, using other social media platforms. We found it very useful in sharing information on what the foundation actually does. But we think that it has actually facilitated the drive and also helped us in increasing awareness.
And has helped a lot humanity in many areas. But the question you ask is, are women benefiting as well as men from this progress? And unfortunately, the answer is no. We remember in 1995, during the landmark conference on women's rights, it was already acknowledged that ICT will take a lot of place in development processes, in economic development from these processes. And when we ask the question, why women cannot be part of this ICT development, the main answer is lack of space in terms of access to information and in terms of contributing also to information and using the technology to move forward. So UN Women has tried also to bring some answers to these processes, besides coming to this kind of forum to advocate for women's rights, because most of the time in many institutions, people forget about this aspect of inequality. Because if women are not benefiting, if women are just like what we call passive users, I see all these women on Facebook, the only thing they put, their lovely pictures, messages that won't really help them benefit from this process. So UN Women has created a platform that is really focused on women's economic empowerment, which is called Empower Women. And it's a global advocacy and knowledge platform on women's economic empowerment. The platform has 500,000 visitors, 20,000 members from 190 countries. Nigeria, of course, because of the numbers maybe, is one of the most active countries in terms of number of members. So in this platform, 4 ways have been used to just make sure that women benefit from this process by creating knowledge and by running the whole active discussion online. We have a lot of discussion online. The summary of the discussion provides key data on a topic and inform future policies. The recent discussion is a call to action from the UN Secretary General, and everyone is given the opportunity, of course, to raise their voice on women, but we try to target women better. And using also the power of storytelling to inspire women, because it's very useful for women to know what are the processes that have been used by other women to be successful in what they are doing. It has also provided to millions of women entrepreneurs with only a regular feature phone at their disposal, access to real-life experiences. Because these are things that women have raised as being critical for them. We are also trying to work a lot with the young people, men as women, as women, because of course the strategy we are focusing in is to make sure that men also are on board, so that the dialogue can end up reaching all of us.
Excellent. I want to pick up one very good point you made just now, awareness, which is how to increase awareness of ICTs at the grassroots level. So my next question to all of you would be, what are good ways in which you can engage with, educate the grassroots, help them to be empowering themselves in how to use ICTs, etc. What are some examples you've seen? What are some of your recommendations to our audience of grassroots engagement?
Well, that's actually fantastic because it goes in line with what we do, and I think it's important that I just give a bit of background in terms of who I am and what Ubongo does. We're a Tanzanian business based in Dar es Salaam. I'm based in Cape Town myself, but our animators, our team, our voice artists, and children we work with are all based in Dar es Salaam. We have a TV show called Ubongo Kids, which is on air in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, Ghana. We're currently engaging with NTA here in Nigeria and SABC in South Africa. And Ubongo Kids teaches maths and science to kids between the ages of 7 and 12. Predominantly at the moment broadcast through free-to-air channels across East Africa and Ghana. We reach about 3 million kids a week through the TV show, and what we're doing at the moment is developing digital products and digital properties to engage with children across the continent. The biggest challenge we're seeing is the access to devices, access to affordable devices that can connect to the internet. So what we did in Tanzania is we've been running a pilot with a platform partner doing SMS engagement where we ask questions via SMS to the kids based on the content that's on the show, as reaffirming the content that they're learning, and they then answer via multiple choice questions, respond to the SMSs. The engagement we found was incredible. We had kids, the average engagement for children entering the platform was 73 questions a day being answered. And when you're talking an age group between 7 and 12, them physically sitting with a telephone and answering 73 questions a day. That was the average over a 3-month period. It was phenomenal. It was beyond our wildest dreams. To the point that we had a lady. Sorry. We had. We had a young child, a girl, I think she was 5 years old, told us a story. She came into the office, wanted to come and meet the team and see the characters and see what we do, and 4 or 5 years old. She'd spent 3 hours on a bus to get to us. But she came with her mom because she wanted to show us that her dad had bought her her own cell phone so that she could engage with Ubongo kids and answer the questions. So a 3-hour bus journey to come and see us, to show her the phone. The phone that she showed us, it was very basic, entry-level device. You could not see the numbers on the keypad because it was so worn down. But she was so proud that her parents had bought her her own phone so that she could answer SMS questions for Ubongo kids. So it just shows you the level of engagement that we're getting. And we feel as a team and as a company that broadcast through TV and radio is going to give you the most amount of reach, but your learning outcomes and the ability for kids to learn is going to be digital moving forward. It's so much more interactive, there's so much more that you can do, but access to those devices are critical.
I agree with him. I think access to devices is critical. For us to get increased amount of participation at grassroots, we have to make sure that affordable devices are made available, especially for the rural dwellers. My colleague here just talked about women empowerment. A few years ago, we started rural telephony for women, which over the years we had touched the lives of about 10,000 women, and it's through devices, being able to empower women as well as the men, because you find that you have to engage some of the communities, you have to engage with them to allow the women to participate in this rural telephony project. And basically, where they were able to start small businesses and then grow from those small businesses through rural telephony, selling credits and doing other things, and a lot of them from just selling credits and using rural telephony, were able to build bigger businesses over the years. And like I said, 10,000 women's lives touched. We find that engaging at the grassroots, you also need to also make sure that you provide capacity building programs. We're able to also make sure that we provide capacity building for those who are blind. Provide social inclusion software for some blind students to be able to use their laptops, so not just using Braille, they're able to use laptops with some sort of software they upload onto their system. We provide them with talking phones, because it's very important that they're also able to communicate with people and also get involved, with participating online and also using their devices to transact and do other things. So fundamentally, really, it's making sure the appropriate types of devices are available, and available in the most rural areas is for the grassroots participation, but available to different types of people as well, with different type of learning disabilities or those who are disabled in other ways. Because with making those sort of things available to them, they're also able to participate in the
especially women, are facing. So most of the time we will tell this, gender is not about women only, and so I'm sure people already think about it. But for you and women, gender is our tool to promote equality, and women are our target. Doesn't mean we don't work with men, but we don't work with men only for the sake of working with them. We work with them to make sure that we will have a positive impact on women. But one of the major challenges women have identified in terms of accessing to ICT is lack of education. Like sometimes we feel like people are not addressing this issue. What they address is access, easy access, cheap phones, cheap internet, all these things. But the main thing we have to address is education. In Nigeria, less than 50% of Nigerian women are literate. We're not talking about educated, we're talking about literacy. So as long as we're not facing these issues and addressing the issue of education, which is a long-term thing, it will be very difficult to ensure use of ICT by women, at least at the community level in many other levels. Research also have shown that when women have the same level of education than men, they benefit from ICT as well as men. They equally benefit from them. So to address the ICT gender divide, we need to look at closely to what women's need at community level and address them. Because sometimes we just tend to think that it's just about money, just about having a project that will help them acquire a phone. So once they have it, what are they going to get from it? They cannot do it. They cannot use it. So we also have some projects where we are helping women by some type of support unit, because we know that by themselves they cannot do it. We just want the world to know that women are part of any development processes, and we need to find answers to the challenges they are facing. Because usually when we go to this kind of forum, of course, we have to be bold enough to be there. People will always talk about technology, which is right. But as this technology, taking into account the fact that gender matters, we are all women and men in societies that define women in a certain way and men in a certain way. I would always say that I'm always impressed by the level of hands-on knowledge that my male colleagues have about ICT. And doesn't matter what we think, historically, if we look at power relation and gender relation, we can give an explanation for that. So as someone who's I'm not an ICT specialist at all, I'm a deputy representative of UN Women, I say that at least one thing I know, even though I cannot make this done, nice design, etc., I use ICT a lot to do my research and conceptualize. And it is very important also that we help young people and young women also define their area, because spending the whole day on Facebook, sending nice pictures, sending these messages, I don't think that that's also the best way to get our young people into this reflection process and into the development process.
Any questions from the audience? I'll go to three other ones. Please will you jump in if you wish. Yes. Can you get a mic to our friend here in the second row?
Thank you. My name is Jude. I'm the president of ISEC Campaign. My question is, how can youth be actively engaged? How can youth be actively involved? Because I've heard what you guys were saying, and especially when the UN women, we currently have a lot of girls in ISEC, for example, who are willing to take part in all these projects, but sometimes you are very inaccessible, and it's very difficult to also reach out to you. For also MTN, we have global community projects, even in Nigeria, that every year we create spaces for a lot of young people to take part in this. But how can we also be involved in the foundation project? And there's also ISEC in Tanzania, so I also am looking forward to, okay, how can ISEC in Tanzania be part of your TV programs? Because case. So how can youth be actively engaged in all your programs? Thank you.
That's a very good question. Africa's median age, I believe, is 19 or something, so this is the youngest continent on the planet. So what can be done to engage youth more effectively with your organization in particular?
For sure. Listen, I'll definitely start. We'd love to have a conversation. We want to include as many people as possible. The average age of our animators in Tanzania, I think, is 20. So we're certainly engaging and training people out of unemployment to animate for us. We think it's vitally important that the content we produce is locally relevant. And how can you produce locally relevant content if you're not engaging with the communities you're involved in? Further, in terms of getting involved and to the lady from the UN's comments about research, and also addressing the first speaker this morning about from the incubators. I personally don't believe that the process begins with research. Research is the result of finding a solution to a problem. Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., etc. None of them came out of a research lab. They came out of a process of solving a problem. Uber, transport. Airbnb, accommodation. They were solving problems. They weren't people sitting in a research lab, sitting around a table thinking, what are the research outcomes? That's not how the problem was solved. The problem was solved first, and then it was implemented. And that implementation is part of the disruptive innovation process that the next speaker discussed. So I think that's a critical differentiation in terms of what has been discussed today. And for youth to be involved, look at solving problems. What are the problems in your local community? How can you create a business, a social outcome that will solve that problem? And I think that's where the innovation will take place, and that's how youth can get more involved and more actively involved in their communities.
Okay, yeah, good question. A good number of our projects, the beneficiaries are young people, youth, young people both in secondary schools and universities. Basically what happens is that we have, over the years we have over 6,000 beneficiaries of scholarship scheme. After they graduate, recipients of scholarship, what happens is that we have an employability workshop for them. Because it's very important, it's not just them graduating. What happens is that we've trained them on how to be more employable, have them, teach them how to present themselves for the job market, teach them some entrepreneurial skills as well, which is pretty critical for them to set up their own businesses. And we also have the same sort of employability workshop for scholarship for giving to blind students, because it's a lot tougher for them to be engaged, those who are disabled. That whole group of people who are disabled need also to be empowered, and young people in that disability space, we've empowered a good number of them have gone out to even write books and solve problems for their fellow disabled people as well. And then we have projects for young people in technical colleges, youth skills development projects, providing and equipping various technical colleges with labs that teach them to become better electricians, better plumbers, because we all know that construction is big business in Nigeria. And typically, a lot of skills are imported into the country. So we recognize that as something that's incredibly important for moving this economy forward. So we set up these youth centers, youth technical colleges, where young people go there, learn how to be proper electricians, learn how to do certain things that that are needed for the building industry. So various initiatives that we have as a foundation that target young people, and some other initiatives that we have planned that would help young people in the ICT space, work working closely with some of the innovation hubs, like the one that the earlier speaker talked about, to get set are targeted at young people. And we also have touched across the globe. So making those sort of things, workshop, their business ideas, teach them how
global mandate, which is to promote gender, develop some kind of project in it that we how we can address it together. Address the issue. As the organization, we are here to raise awareness and also support those who want to make progress in some areas by linking them up with some structures, with some like experts, etc., who can help them make breakthrough in terms of promoting it.
Great. My next question for you is a bit different. It's about CSR, corporate social responsibility. What are some of your thoughts on how CSR is being used today, maybe to make ICTs more accessible, more affordable to people? How can big ICT companies, maybe in the case of MTN, set up a foundation and thereby engage with civil society and so on? What are the different ways in which the CSR component of corporates can be engaged? Many countries now are passing laws that every company must set aside X percentage of funds for CSR, and they have to prove that they've used it for social and charitable development kind of purposes. So what are some of your thoughts in the region or from outside on what's happening on the CSR front and how our audience can benefit from this new development? Let's take for you. It's a pitch for you.
really, CSR, NTN has been exemplary, I think, not just because I work for NTN. We set up a foundation about 10 years ago, where 1% of our profit after tax is set aside for corporate social investment. And in the past 10 years, we're proud to say that we've invested over 20 billion naira. And we have over 500 project sites across the country. The model that we use for our CSR is really mostly through public-private partnership. And that's one model that's one way to make sure that CSR is successful. Because you can't do it alone. And also we recognize the fact that government can't do it on their own. We believe that as a good corporate organization, a good corporate citizen, that it's important to give back. We do business in Nigeria, we do business, and it's a tradition of NTN across all our footprint. NTN as an organization has a foundation in every country that we operate, so it is our tradition. And, and being an ICT company, we've plugged into the fact that a lot of our initiatives are ICT driven. Okay, we have rolled out projects in the education space, projects from inception, projects that have touched secondary schools. We have ICT labs in over 64 secondary schools across the country. Again, using that PPP model. We've set up ICT projects in universities, the same model, okay? And but what we found is that, for those sort of projects in the past, and reliance on the public side of things sometimes don't always work out. Because they sign up, there's an MOU initially to do certain things. Power, as we all know, is a major issue for us. So we don't just bring the computers and set up in schools. We provide alternative power, and as I mentioned earlier, capacity building is very important, especially for the teachers. So we build capacity for the teachers to help them use the ICT as a tool for teaching and learning. Young people are naturally drawn to ICT, but the digital gap that we talk about is really predominantly among the older people, and the teachers who also rely on the writing materials. So it's important for us to bring them into the fold as well. But we found that the commitments that a number of these institutions or parastatals that are made are not often kept. MTN project. So MTN should be want to continue funding those sort of things. So in terms of sustainability, it becomes very difficult to maintain some of these projects. So what we've then done, following the difficulties and the challenges in these areas, is to say, okay, let's move away from fixed projects that require physical projects in terms of generators and stuff like that, and let's move to digital using the mobile devices. So we've come up with new projects where university students across the country will be able to access information using their mobile devices. That way we don't have to worry about maintaining physical laptops and computers, or powering their generators to maintain facilities. So PPP model is important, but from our experience, we've then eased off the involvement of government is important, but reliance on government for sustainability is something that we try to ease off, creating different models that the government will be involved in the selections and so on. But in terms of what we would so much rely on government for the success of the project, because what you come from issues of continuity. Some ultimately the best way to go. But
What's the view from
And last year we had a big gathering with private sector companies in our HQ. And the question was, how can we get the private sector in Nigeria, like better support at least at country level? Because it is well known that the private sector in Nigeria is a very vibrant private sector. But believe me, again, research has shown that private sector companies that don't put money in anything that is most of the time related to gender equality. Effort have just started to be made, but maybe it's not from ICT companies that we're getting most of the support we are getting ready. And usually when private sector companies also invest in development, like it's going to be more in terms of supporting education. I think that UN agencies that work on education get most of the budget money from the private sector organization, and of course support the flag of refugees. They are doing very well. But in terms of promoting gender equality, we are yet to see more involvement of the private sector. And at the end of this panel, I talk more closely with my sister from MTN, because it doesn't matter what, women are more keen to support activities related to gender equality.
I hope more people from the audience also want to check. Please do touch base with Ajit. Questions from the audience. We will wrap up in a few minutes, but okay, I can see some hands here. 1, 2, and then 3.
Yeah, Dr. Chukwuto Michima is my name, the publisher of African Woman International Magazine, the criticism medium for packaging, promoting, and projecting African women worldwide. ICT for social development. I know that women have absolute concentration, just like children. So most of the women can participate very well if they are educated. My question is to the regional coordinator, UN Women. What plans have you made to get women more involved in the ICT for social development? Because just like my young man Jules stated, you are not accessible. I had Nigerian women who were interested to go to US to participate in the International Women's Day. We packaged everything. We sent a letter to office. It was not replied. No communication whatsoever. And that's the programs you have done, just like you are using the ICT companies that are not participating. You are not using consultants that can get to them. You have to package yourself properly for the ICT people to know exactly what they will benefit if they are promoting the programs. They are not doing that. Now, for my sister, Moine Obama, I have watched some of her programs. We've packaged a lot of nice programs from her foundation. But I wonder the programs we've packaged to promote women's activity worldwide. I want to hear them. And for my friend Bradley, we are packaging special programs for the children. And you know that women
I mean, children cannot do anything without you. Just like when we gave an instance of a 5-year child who came to the studio, your mother brought her. So what programs have you in your TV programs for the women to want to do? Thank you very much.
Okay, while you think about the answers for those questions, let's hear some other questions as well.
Can I also throw a curveball to the audiovisual guys if they can play a video clip of a project we did with the UN actually. If they could do a YouTube search.
Can we come back to the later because we have some DV issues. So then we just do some quick Q&A. But yeah, go ahead please.
Okay, I just quickly run my question through. I was putting together all the progress achieved by NTN so far in some of their corporate social responsibility. And what I can put together so far are television shows like Fame, like the first Nigerian Star and the rest. But I see most of these things on the screen. And these are targeted at music stars, movie stars. And from me being an IT personality, I want to translate what's the market value when these guys go out. Because I know some of them have winners in some of the shows. It seems not to have translated so much in terms of social development. It's just more of they are either they become famous and all that, they go in their ladders, and they don't give back to society. So at the end of the day, no leadership skills impacted. When putting this together, some of these guys get like 5 million naira for the prize, SUVs, sign up with Sony and all that. So when I was also looking at some competitions like mathematics competitions for young kids, and what's the start price? 100,000 naira. You get science debates for kids and youths. What's the start price? You get 50,000 naira. I knew your attentions have been drawn to all this. So if I put this all together, I don't see corporate social responsibility being actually exemplified because it translates to economic benefits to the country. Because that person will get that prize, develop more, get leadership skills, and add more value. Then on the side of giving mobile devices to women, teaching them how to surf the net, get some stuff, I just see that as give me fish, and that's it. I'm not teaching them to fish, so it's a short intervention. The thing is, I'm just trying to bring this to you that we have development partners who are going to give these women mobile devices. Connect them to market access. Small scale women farmers. My organization has done 3 of these programs. We've gone to communities where we told these women were given mobile devices by tech posts. In fact, they couldn't use it for a long time and the devices got damaged, we don't know where they are. But when we engage them, so just to summarize, I'm putting this to when we engage them with market access, VR tools we can use, they saw the benefit to that. So I don't know what really your take is, whether you do M&E in a long-term basis or you just give them this and work out of the community. The last thing is, how do you really match some of your social corporate responsibility to, in the long term, what's the economic value to the country?
Okay, roadmap metrics, those kinds of issues, and let's get this question in.
1 minute. I'd just like to respond to Ife. Ife, thanks. You've spoken about several issues. I'm just going to take the one that belongs to me. In terms of the content and CRBTs for the prospective artists you spoke about who go through Project Fame, I want you to bear in mind that it's not an exercise in fertility. It's also you can see it from a CSR, you can see it from a return on investment and a return on objective. You change the lifestyles of these youngsters, you give them hope, and you use all the basic amenities that is current that we're here to deliberate on, which is innovative technology. These young superstars, budding superstars, which MTN attempts to groom, they metamorphosize, and they give back to society because in terms of their music, we call it CRBTs, which is content. And revenue is generated, they're able to look after their families, and their families are able to look after other families. If you look at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, it's also another edutainment, and it's also educational. And that they go on to also populate their developmental milestones. So I think you need to be a little bit fair to when you say that it's not
in sync with innovation or CSR it is indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, more research and more maybe direct, indirect, cascading impacts, as you rightly mentioned. Yeah. Last final question from here. Can we pass the mic to our friend here? Please introduce yourself also to the audience.
Okay, my name is Ibrahim Dika. I work with Etisalat. Just to your starting comment around CSR and regulation or laws being enacted, personally, I don't believe it's the good way to do it. Companies should be allowed to practice CSR as they see fit. It improves your social license to operate in a place. And I think the more leeway you're given and the light and touch regulation, it helps. The second comment I have, a question, is more for Bradley, to hear his perspective around some of the countries where they operate. In Nigeria, content development is easy. We're about to go through a regulation right now that will make value-added services a little more difficult to get into that space, and that's where, of course, you have a lot of these young people like the gentleman was talking about, who can innovate. It's going to sort of restrict, make it more difficult to enter that space. And so, do you see such difficulty in regulation around other countries, or are they also fairly heavily regulated in some of the other countries where you operate?
Okay, we have just a few minutes left, so maybe if each of you can wrap up in 2 or 3 minutes each, responses to some or maybe all of those questions. You can take your pick, and you can also catch up and then in the public.
Okay.
So I guess you had a live share of the questions.
Yes, I can start. Yeah. Thank you for your question, and thanks, Donna, for your input as well. From a CSR perspective, we have actually touched the lives of women tremendously. I started off talking about the Rural Telephony project that we had, and we've had over like 10,000 women across the country that have benefited from rural telephony. Empowering the women have ended up empowering their communities. These are women ordinarily, who didn't have any means of livelihood. We actually don't believe in giving fish, as a matter of fact. We're all about teaching to fish, and empowerment is important for us. We're all about building capacity, and that's why I said earlier that you will not find us giving a project or intervention without capacity building. It's key. It's at the heart of sustainability, because if you just give somebody something without training them, they're going to dump that, and they're going to value that intervention. So the RTP, we've also had videos of empowerment. We've given intervention and training for women who are widows across the country, providing them with basic business skills, bookkeeping skills, and providing them with opportunities to set up their businesses and to be able to take care of their children. Issues around widows in Nigeria is very concerning, and sometimes they are ostracized in their various communities. We've had projects, even in the music space, from a CSR perspective. A lot of women, or young women rather, have benefited from MTN Foundation with Song Scholar initiative. It was a 2-year project where young people train for a music diploma, talented young people, train in real music, and learning how to play musical instruments and performing. And a good number of them have moved on to perform in orchestras across the world, not just Nigeria. And a good number of them perform in bands and teach children in schools across the country. And our scholarship scheme, we're very proud of our scholarship scheme, both the Science and Technology Scholarship Scheme and the Scholarship Scheme for the Blind. I always emphasize scholarship scheme for the blind, and we have a good number of blind girls who have gone through our scholarship scheme, have graduated. Some of them have become lawyers, and some of them have gone to law school rather, and so on and so forth. So we're very proud of the fact that we don't just provide them with the money as when they meet the grade. We also train them. We also keep them engaged during the course of their courses, through Facebook, through other social media platforms, to make sure that they're on track, okay, and to make sure that they know what they plan to do with their lives. Monitoring and evaluation, like you mentioned, So when we start off a project, important for social development projects. So at the end of the day, we can say this is a real social, economic benefit, not just to MTN benefits, but for the nation at large. You know, the fact that we are indeed a critical agent. We believe that through the foundation of economic development and MTN should be commended, I think, for setting up a foundation. Set aside a portion of profit after tax. Thank you.
Ben, quick comments?
Absolutely. I completely agree with Lonnie. I think MTN should be commended for what they're doing in Nigeria and across other markets as well. They certainly do invest in being a good corporate citizen within the countries they operate in. To the gentleman from IAD Summit's comments, I think regulating CSR is not the ideal way to go. I see why governments are doing it, because there is very little from many companies in terms of a commitment to be good corporate citizens. So yes, that is a challenge. My personal feeling is that CSR should be the way that we decrease our independence or dependence on foreign aid money coming into the continent. I would ideally love Africa to be in a position that we're not reliant on money coming in from outside of the continent anymore. We have the resources to be able to do it on our own, and I think it's critical. The gentleman from Etisalat's comments or question around VAS regulation. Yes, the regulation makes operating more difficult, but in the telecoms and ICT environment across Africa, regulation is key in terms of ensuring quality of networks, quality of service across many of the places. The unregulated markets are often easier to work in, but are often not the most effective. So I think there's catch-22. There's positives to both sides of it. So I think you just got to work around it and find solutions.
Anju, any comments on access outreach by UN Women?
Yes, I just wanted to highlight the fact that as a UN agency in charge of gender equality, we are facing a lot of challenges. I earlier said that the private sector does not really invest in gender equality. The donor community also doesn't invest in gender equality. We are all talking about gender equality, all the benefit we can get from it, but really there is no investment in terms of promoting gender equality. We usually say that they invest on women, on pregnant women, and on children up to the age of 5, because they just want to invest in this aspect of vulnerability of women. We used to say that the MDG are really focused on pregnant women and women being educated until they finish elementary school. The reason being, all studies also have shown that once women finish elementary school, they can take care of the children. We said that vaccination programs are followed, that nutrition is well taken care of. So we face a lot of challenges. And also some indicators show that if women are not represented in parliament, doesn't matter what you do, where women are not represented, the issues are not taken care of. In a country like Nigeria, the major challenge is Nigeria is one of the few countries in the world where 2 elections in a row, women's representation is falling apart. So these are also all the major issues we are facing. And like I said earlier, we are not an ICT organization. The intervenant was talking about women's participation to CSW. We are an intergovernmental institution. We always say that we have a special relationship with civil society organization, because UN Women is a unified force, is one of the only UN organization that was born because the civil society organization wanted this UN agency to exist. But CSW based on that, we are going to, support will come.
Colonel Sangu Bello, retired Vice Chairman.